the A4 into Harvard Hill, they couldn't access Grove Park because of the stationary cars in Wolsey Gardens. I could judge the amount of traffic in the road by how easily I could breathe when I woke up. Following the closure, I now wake up breathing freely. It has been said you cannot eliminate pollution from one street, and we are close to the A4, but all I can say is that it has made a difference to me. And of course, the children in the Falcon School at the top of Burnaby Gardens would also have been breathing in these fumes, not to mention any children living in the 3 streets I've mentioned, and the children coming from Harvard Hill underpass to the schools in Grove Park. And I would say the area is now quieter and more pleasant to live in, and I'm not the only resident to think this, but this issue has become so toxic, and to support the measures publicly invite abuse, as you've seen. So evidence supporting the measures taken, if you have the pollution statistics, would be helpful to back up the positive effects on the area.
Thank you so much, Iris. I will go to the councillors first, and then I'll come back to the floor. Councillor Thompson.
Now, I'm not going to say I spend my life reading everything that comes out of central office or the government, but look, no one doubts there is a climate emergency. No one doubts we have to take serious positive steps to decarbonise, to reduce, dependence on fossil fuels and the rest of it. That's why this government obviously brought forward the target to ban diesel and petrol, and then the list of things we have done goes on. No one is saying that we should not cycle. Everyone I speak to who has gripes and moans and complaints about the one I know better, it's not because it's in my ward, the South Chiswick scheme, are people who are very dutiful in terms of moving, because they can probably afford to electric cars. We have the highest recycling rates in the borough. We do cycle all over the place. We do take our children to school, sometimes come one may in terms of the weather and carrying projects and castles they built. And I've done all this stuff in the past. We do our bit. The only issue was, and don't make a false debate here, whether that particular cycle lane is in the right place, configured properly, or whether that down there, South Chiswick, no one ever called it South Chiswick, it was always Grove Park, but anyway, you decided it was now South Chiswick, whether South Chiswick has the best scheme that works well, that encourages residents to live well and the rest of it. That's the issue. There's no theoretical debate or disagreement about it. I think one thing, and I think both sides need to ponder this, I don't understand, it seems a reflection of our society. This has become, as someone mentioned actually earlier, the lady who spoke in that area of the room, this has divided Chiswick. Whatever the rights and wrongs of it, the vitriol on Twitter, the comments that are made by both sides against my council colleagues who stand up for residents who put views across, disgust me. I've had 4 years, as I said at the start, off the council. We never had this rubbish. I don't do Twitter, I don't do social media. But why can't democratically elected people on both sides make points, put points across, without being harangued and criticised and vilified? And I say that's happened to my colleagues, it happens on both sides. I think we need to move this one forward because we have to diffuse the issue. None of us in this room are bad people. None of us want to trash the planet, kill children in bicycles, and the list goes on. We're all good people. We all came to Chiswick for a reason. It's a great place to live. We love the trees, we love the green, we love the environment, we love the space, okay? But we are talking, and say, as a Conservative, I'm terribly pragmatic. Does it work? We're still calling it an experimental scheme. It beggars belief to me and to most residents how the amount of money and time and effort you put into that, you can possibly hand on heart say that if everyone decides against it, I'm agnostic, I've never used it. I don't cycle that way if I'm cycling into London. I'll go along the river, I've got time, I make alternative plans. But it beggars belief for most of us that given all the investment from Transport for London, all the time Hounslow Highways have spent digging it up and reconfiguring it and all the rest of it, that we seriously are meant to entertain that someone, if we all said no, it would disappear overnight. Of course it won't. My other final point, because since I'm waffling, and I like to waffle, the resident in the van, the man in the van who gets stuck on Duke's Road, that's nothing to do with the nothing to do with the LTN, or in a sense it is, or the roadworks, the works that are happening temporarily. That's because you can't get out of Duke's Road onto Chiswick High Road because the traffic is blocked up. So any day of the week, it goes all the way down towards St Mary's School and William Hogarth School because you can't get onto the... That's the issue I think he was trying to raise. I think when you answered, you were talking about temporary roadworks, blah, blah, blah. That's not it. Any day of the week. And if you were trying to get down that road, which you're allowed to, you can't. Totally impossible. And that's another factor you need to consider.
Chair, we need to suspend standing orders and extend it to 10:15. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
what time?
10:15 at the most. 1:05.
We'll do another 15, 20 minutes.
Another 15, 20 minutes. That's it. Agreed?
Agreed? Sorry, agreed?
Thank you.
20 past. 20 past.
Well, maximum is 10:20. Okay.
Okay. The lady at the back at the green top.
Hello. Hi, I'd just like to agree with the lady who spoke about cycling with her children and walking in Grove Park. It was dangerous before, and I don't think it is now. There's no more rat runners coming up to Harbour Hill, and it's made a huge positive difference just walking around the area. And given she made that point, then the other point I would make is that there's been mention of putting a bike lane along the A4. The A4 is completely unsuitable for regular cycling of the kind that I do with my children. We don't want to go zooming along the A4. We want to go to the shops and to the library. And it's not safe to cycle with children along there anyway because it's too noisy. And maybe that would make that a question, which is that children nowadays have really strong views on this kind of stuff. So I wondered if the council's got any plans to try and go around schools or gather views from children, because certainly mine have got plenty to say on this, and I'm sure that others have too.
Yeah, we have plans. They're actually published on Chiswick calendar, our plans about cycling as councillors. It's still there, the document's still live. But can I, thank you for that. Can I ask Councillor Biddulph to say a few words, perhaps in response as well?
In response to Dr. Edward Seaton. Yes, but first of all, just to comment to Peter, who's left the room, who I agree with entirely. Just one risk in what he said. As soon as you start talking about a road that's got traffic stuck on it, that's an answer for an LTN. So please just not... Let's bear that in mind. Every single blocked road, displaced traffic from a low-traffic neighbourhood is another excuse for another LTN, and that is already in the plans. Let's not forget that. There is a borough-wide plan for LTNs everywhere, and any complaints about a blocked road will just be a faster solution to an LTN. But I also agree with Peter's point about being pragmatic. We're dealing with pragmatists here in the Conservative Party, and we've got ideologues who are trying to reduce traffic. I think, Catherine, you said you wanted to reduce traffic in Chiswick by 50%. And I don't know what your starting point is and what you've done to look at the economic impact of that, for example, and the impact on your residents' lives. So that's really got to be carefully thought through, and it is an ideological point. But coming on to the paper that we were read to, that, of course, is Andrew Gilligan, and he's now no longer around. So what was written then doesn't apply now. But the facts in it are unsubstantiated, they're just stated. There's nothing to back them up. This bedding in argument is patronising. We've heard it from the start. Just wait, little dears, and you'll learn to love it, is not the way to treat adults and not the way to treat Chiswick. There's been no recognition in any of the schemes of the way we live our lives. We chose to live here, yes, because of the good road networks going west, north, south, and so on. Of course, that was a choice that we made. But most of us, because of the way that Chiswick is laid out, walk. And if we don't walk, we take the bus. I know people, and some of them in the room here today, who have cars, who hardly ever use them, because they don't need to. They're needed for longer journeys rather than for day-to-day living. And that's a lot of people's lifestyles. They drive when they need to. So your schemes, and schemes that are included in the pamphlet by Andrew Gilligan, are based on a generality, and you really have to look at Chiswick and the way Chiswick is to make decisions on how you should be affecting our lives. And one of the things I'd like to say in connection with this is we've had revolution and change after revolution and change since the 8th of March 2020, when we met Mark Frost, your predecessor, Jefferson, on Devonshire Road, when that was the first move in the name of social distancing that was anti-car. It has gone on. We've had road closures, we've had low traffic neighbourhoods, we've had buses stuck in gridlock, we've had the C9 being changed again, more road closures, and on it goes. And now you want to change our town centre and make all sorts of new changes through the Chiswick Centre the town centre visions. Would you please stop? This is our life, not yours.
Can I call, is Rachel Hearn here? Is Rachel, no. Rachel Hearn. Do we have Rachel Hearn? Do we have Rachel Hearn? No. Do we have Andrew Walmsley? Yeah, can we, oh, we've already heard from you, Andrew. Do you want to speak again? Okay, and then we'll go to you.
Can you hear me? Right. I lived in Germany for the last 9 years, in a city where 43% of journeys are made by bicycle, and 80% of journeys of less than 2 kilometres are made by bicycle or on foot. And they achieved this with lots of LTNs and lots of cycle lanes, and they were fought 30 years ago, tooth and nail, by drivers and by traders. And now, not one of them would choose to turn it back to how it used to be, because now children can go to school on their bikes independently. There's no school run there. People can walk around, the air is clean. Not a single person would choose to turn the clock back to the days when cars dominated streets and our children couldn't go out.
Thank you. Can you give it to Dr. Seaton? Dr. Seaton. Dr. Seaton. Dr. Seaton, yeah. Ed? No, it's fine. Okay, this lady here.
Yes, so I want to say I lived in Chiswick. Something with this? Yeah. I've lived in Chiswick for 23 years. I cycle or walk first. I drive last. And I have consistently used the high street as my place to go and amble along, whether it be bike, walking, whatever. I'll do one errand and drop 20 more in. This week, I received an email from Hounslow asking my opinion on the new plans of things like more cafes, more streets, more spaces to gather, etc. I do not gather on the high street anymore. I avoid it with my bike because it is dangerous on the cycle lane, because it is the wrong design in the wrong place, but because now that we've lost the bus lane, and no matter how you eliminate a certain number of cars, the fact that every car idles behind every stop of every bus is always going to create pollution in an area where you are asking us now to vote and say, yes, I want to sit outside and eat and I want to walk along. I can't sit outside and eat with those kinds of fumes, and it's not about less cars, it's about the fact that you've eliminated our bus lane. And the cycle lane could go elsewhere.
Thank you. Hold that thought. Can I go to Councillor Giles first? Ruth, I see you, don't worry. And I see the editor of the Chiswick calendar as well. I see you guys. Can I ask Councillor Giles first? Jefferson, then Ruth, and then the editor of the Chiswick calendar after that as well.
Thank you. So to go back to the report, I haven't read it, but at the same time, I think that the arguments that we have seen have been extremely polarizing and not taking into consideration the nuance of some of these arguments that many of us will already have. I won't really speak to CS9 because the majority of it's not in my ward, but I will speak to aspects of it. I will also speak to the South Livable neighbourhood. Unlivable neighbourhood, I don't know. This is an area that I grew up in, that I was born in, that I learned to ride my bike in and was able to do this, let's say, between 30 and 40 years ago. And I have chosen to stay in Chiswick, and I've chosen to represent the area that I grew up in because I feel very passionately about it. And thankfully, people have given me a mandate to stand here and represent it by the nature of being elected. What I would like to say, though, is that if we look at the modal shift and we look at what we're trying to do in South Chiswick, when we were talking about the plans originally, we were looking for imaginative ways. The requests that were there were to bring in a new bus route along Strand and the Green and Hartington Road. That was something that people wanted. If we're looking at modal shift, we need to be investing in public transport. We need to be making sure that our tube lines have step-free access. We need to make sure that you can actually access the platform at Kew Bridge and Chiswick. What we've seen is that actually the removal of the bus lane on Chiswick High Road hasn't created the modal shift that we would have wanted. If we go to Germany and look at the plan that they brought in over the summer with free train transport, and we look at the shift that was brought in for modal transport, was the whole intention was to bring people out of their cars so that they could discover Germany for €12 for the summer or something like this. The stats actually proved that more people got off their bikes and away from walking and took public transport. They didn't move out of their cars to do this. So it's really interesting to look at what other countries are doing and seeing the stats that are coming out of that. Okay. So, you know, there are aspects of CS9 that I think are quite effective. I wouldn't say they're perfect. For example, the route from Wellesley Road down to Kew Bridge. That was actually a very long time coming and very logical. What I would now say is that actually there's a risk there because you've got, and I've caught councillors, I won't name them, cycling on the pavement because they are unable to access the eastern side of the cycle lane to access the CS9 going up to Chiswick. What I would also say there is actually that was also a result of the fact that there have been issues around Kew Bridge and that junction at Kew Bridge Road, Strand on the Green, for a long, long time. And as Councillor Sam Hearn and I, or then Councillor Sam Hearn,
thank you,
and I then discussed, we were basically using a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. And what I am concerned about is that the next phase of CS9 will actually remove some of those public transport routes, not take into consideration aspects of disabilities and those with special needs, which I think has been a topic we haven't really discussed about when we're talking about equalities when it comes to these projects. So for me, it's not about saying yes or no, it's about understanding the nuance, understanding the modal shift that needs to be taken. In Riverside, we have some of the highest levels of cycling and walking before this scheme even came in.
Thank you. We're running out of time.
And in Chiswick generally. So, and I think there's also taking into consideration that we also have a PTAL level of 0 for much of the ward. So if we want to encourage people out of their cars, there are alternative routes than creating permanent barriers.
Thank you.
And creating divisions where there are none.
I think your point is made. Okay.
No, Ron, sorry. Like, these are all points that I've made publicly and I've written about, but people refuse to acknowledge what I have said before and would prefer to tarnish me with a brush that does not stand.
No, it's unfair, and I take that on board. It's totally unfair, and I completely support you on that. The vitriol on Twitter is not good. But now we're running out of time. Jefferson, could you be brief in responding to some of those? And Catherine, I said you think you had a follow-up. And then I've got to go to Ruth.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And I think Councillor Giles made a couple of very fair points. So when it comes to, because this issue has become so toxified, we don't actually talk about the other things the council is doing as well. So the agenda of decarbonization requires a package of measures. It isn't just going to be solved through one route. So LTS is one of it, but cycleway is also one of it. But beyond that, we're already having conversations with TfL around bus reliability, connectivity improvements, and that conversation is already live. Councillor Don and I met with TfL officers very recently about how we can start transforming our buses within the borough from ICE and diesel through to EVs. So that conversation with TfL is already happening, and we expect some results to happen very soon. In terms of other things that the council is also doing, you may have seen Councillor Don presented our EV strategy recently, which would look at improving our EV charge point provision all around the borough, aiming for about 2,500 in the next couple of years. So that, again, is another way we address it. We're also exploring a bike share scheme, which I'm sure will come forward in due course, which will ensure that people can actually hire bikes as well. But all of these issues is just a package of measures. It's not just about the LTNs, it's not just about the cycleway. And in terms of the connectivity of the cycleway, I think a number of questions have been raised as to why it's on Chiswick High Road.
Because it's the quickest route on Strava. It's the quickest, directest route to town on Strava. If you look at an east-west route, it's proven.
It cannot be viewed in isolation. The Chiswick tranche of Cycleway 9 connects Hammersmith all the way through to the rest of the borough. So the next phase of CS9 will be going through Brentford, from Brentford all the way through to Hounslow. So you could see a connection there from all the way.
Yeah, and I referred to the next stage with Kew Bridge. Sorry, Jefferson. I did refer to that and saying that I have concerns about it with public transport and disability access.
We'll move on because it's not going to be a dialogue. Let's take it from Ruth Mayokas, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello. Sorry, I need to put this down. There's been much talk tonight about there never was traffic in Chiswick. This is 2000. Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry, you've had your turn. Oh, sorry, you interrupted me before. Okay, sorry. Anyway, this is Chiswick High Road in 2016. You will notice the cycle lane is a car park, a free car park. The buses are stuck in traffic. A woman behind me commented about the bus lanes and how the bus lanes had gone because of C9. Most of us will remember, and I've lived here 45 years, that the bus lane was a free car park all evening and all weekends. I have been to Chiswick School to ask the parents and the students. I think I'm probably the first one to actually go and talk to them, the students who are our future, like the measures. Belmont Primary School, to which my son went, and we instigated safe routes to school because it was a traffic island, but we were rejected having a zebra crossing across it because someone objected to the possible noise. Belmont School have said that life is so much better for all the children. Students at Chiswick School say life is so much better because of all the measures that have gone in. So if any of you would like to come and talk to the pupils at Chiswick School, like I have done already, then please do.
Thank you.
Now, no, wait a minute. My questions are, because Cycleway 9 is incredibly successful, some of you may know that there is something called Cycle Sisters, which is a group of Muslim women who generally don't cycle because it's not safe for them, and yet in the west of the borough, there are well over 70 Muslim women who are now cycling as their way of getting about independently. And for them, Cycleway 9 is very safe. One of the leaders couldn't come tonight because she was poorly, but they love it, they enjoy it, and it means that they can travel independently and with their children. My questions are, the junction at Heathfield Terrace, is that going to be a dedicated left turn for cycling when it is red for pedestrians? Because then it should be, because that's how normal traffic is. And also, please can we make sure that the advanced stop lines are policed properly and enforced? Because when I'm in there with my bicycle, inevitably there's a moped, and inevitably there are various people that I can see in this room who go across. And I would just like to ask, Joanna Biddulph, are you still a member of One Chiswick that calls Hounslow Council the Gestapo?
Sorry,
I think you should leave
please,
One Chiswick.
Thank you very much.
We doesn't have members, Ruth, and you know that.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, I beg your pardon. That's the sort of the attitude that we're... That's the sort of attitude that we do not want to have in this sort of forum. I'm going to ask the editor of Chiswick Calendar, Bridget Osborne, to ask a question, and then you can respond to both of those.
Me, I think this is on, is it? Oh, yes. It just strikes me that we're discussing this here today in the middle of what is a perfect storm of traffic in Chiswick. We've got all this traffic displaced from the A4 roadworks into the high road. We've got the works with the cycle lane buggering up the high road. We haven't yet had a chance to see how any of this works without it being either during COVID or during massive bloody roadworks. So couldn't we have this again in January or April, once we have had a chance to experience what it's actually like normally? Please.
Can we just note that for now? Jan Talek at the back, and then this gentleman at the front. Jan Talek, is it? Note that for now, please.
I actually wanted to talk about South Chiswick and avoid CS9 for the minute. I've lived here over 50 years. I used to live in Strand-on-the-Green. I now live in the Watchfield estate. I have friends there for all over Chiswick. I walk most of the time. I have a car that I use only when I have to use it. Yeah. But it's when I have to use it, I find it incredibly ridiculous to have to come all the way up to Hogarth roundabout to come back up Sutton Court Road. And there's a simple solution to unite Chiswick, and that is number plate recognition for anyone with a W4 address. That way, we do cut out through traffic, but at least it's one Chiswick able to visit anyone in Chiswick.
Mr. Pike at the front. Tom.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say to Councillor Bidoff, she's quite right. If you have a general report about the whole of the UK, you've got to be careful how you apply it to a local area. And in fact, I think to Councillor Thompson, a way of getting the heat and to make pragmatic decisions is actually to look at the effects of the scheme, including, of course, when we actually have roads which aren't plugged up because of A4 disruptions. But we do already have some important data, and though I don't like to contradict Karen, she is wrong to say that the pollution monitor has been removed. It's just been made a lot smaller, and we now have continuous data for over 10 years. And the air, people will be maybe surprised by this, but the air has never been cleaner. Last year was the first time it actually fell below the legal requirements for pollution on the high road. And there is a simple reason for that. That is that we actually have about half the number of cars on the high road as we did have in the early 2000s. The traffic on the high road, and this is again measurable data, these are things that we can agree on. We shouldn't have an argument about the facts. We also shouldn't have an argument about how many cyclists are on C9. We've got camera monitors dotted all the way along. It's averaging around 3,000. It peaks at around 4,000 a day. That's over half the number of cars. We should focus on the facts here, take the heat out of the argument, and make judgments based on what is happening here in Chiswick, not on general papers in the UK and how it is working out there. And I would like the councillors, my question would be, please, could you ensure that when we do have these assessments, would you please make sure that surveys are used, that surveys based on the facts are used, rather than comments which may be ill-informed? I think it's very important that.
Good point. Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have actually run out of time, but like my colleague is over there, if your question has not been answered, I'm really sorry, Ms. Rabin, but we have, out of the interest of the actual meeting, we have run out of time. I'm really sorry if you haven't answered your question, but you have got my colleague there to take them on. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Chair, do we not need to do formal stuff like agree minutes? And
yes. So just on the last 3 points that were made, Jefferson, could you action and respond to that through me? And I can, sorry, the people who asked the last question, the second to last question, could you just give your email to Afsal there so I can respond to you to those questions, those points. Next part is to minutes of meeting held on the 12th of October 2021. Agreed? Minutes of the meeting held on January 18, 2022.
Agreed.
Any urgent business? Anything that we've discussed? Sorry, anything that we've not discussed that needs to be raised? No. Please remember to fill in the feedback forms that my colleague Charlotte has kindly provided. Tom, please fill in that feedback form. It would be really helpful for us. There's a feedback form around here. before you leave. Thank you so much. And councillors, stay back for a photo. Thank you so much. Thank you.